All right, we are live on YouTube. Welcome everyone. It's Monday evening for the first time, and we are working with the book The Invocation of Presence. I'll start sharing my screen. Uh, I believe we started reading this chapter and we went through few pages. But I personally don't remember much. So if that's the same with you guys, we can start from the beginning again.
I think that's great.
Okay, do you want to get us started, Alka?
Sure. Am I audible clearly?
Yes.
I rose by another name. At an early morning hour, W stormed into the candlelit chamber with in which G had been working with some of his more intimate pupils. Standing on the top step, towering over everyone seated in the sunken chamber, W demanded a meeting of the work group. G jumped and roared. Then go to the telephone and call long distance to assemble the entire group from everywhere, all over the world. W wishes a meeting. As G stormed out of the chamber, he shouted over his shoulder, "If you wish to handle this upset, then call the children, call your mother, call your father, call everyone to assemble." From her high perch, W flashed an angry glance downward, scanning the astonished, puzzled faces of those seated around the chamber, before she whirled around and dashed out. He returned to the chamber and said, "This is an example of the active presence of W's lunar parasite. Her sense of drama demands that she wake people up and keep them up through the night to talk with her, to assuage her upset." Then he asked L to find W, who had fled the house into the darkness. K offered to help L with the search. They returned after looking in all other buildings and walking around the surrounding grounds. As Kay took off her shoes and walked over to warm herself by the fire, she sighed in disgust. This dramatic scene seems ridiculous, absurd. G glanced at Kay and asked, "You wish to work? This is also work." "Well, I don't think I am cut out for it," Kay admitted. "Well, I do not think I am cut out for it either," G retorted. "Consider the idea that the chemical factory produces various chemical reactions under certain psychological conditions. Have you noticed that your body produces a definite odor if you become upset, angry, or frightened? With this in mind, if we are serious about work, we should be willing to expose our machine to whatever conditions are necessary for work and to produce the alchemical changes which make us able to work." "Do you mean we must play through these trivial dramas?" he asked. "We must use pettiness," G replied. "Just by the tone of your question, it is obvious that you wish to eliminate these dramas. We use whatever is happening in the same way that one uses the force in jiu-jitsu, using the momentum of our opponent. In this case, organic conditioning to overcome the opponent. If we are weak in a certain way, particularly if we are suggestible and fall easily under hypnotism, we must find a way to use this for our work." I'm sorry, I'll pass on. It's in the middle of the paragraph. Should I finish it? Okay.
Yeah,
What
if you
can
if you wanna keep reading, go ahead.
okay. What can we do to eradicate hypnotic urges? Destroy the impulse? This is ordinarily impossible, and just the resulting frustration should produce an impressive amount of negative force. In this way, even our automatic mechanical suggestibility can work for our work, even if it is part of our organic conditioning. If somebody else wants to read, they can. Otherwise, I can continue. For example, Om, who is a professional hypnotist, is very suggestible himself. He has certain beliefs about hypnotism and wishes to verify them, whether they are true or not. Although he easily hypnotizes and makes effective suggestions to other people, he studies hypnotism as he understands it, and not only in one crude form. Everything he learns will be transformed from its raw state into something conforming to these fixated beliefs already formed in him. Therefore, if you're naturally jealous, find a way to use your jealousy for your work. T looked puzzled. T, you look puzzled. Have you not heard this idea before? Surely someone can help her to understand this idea of Jujitsu Yoga. You have said before that we can use our weak tendencies, such as forgetfulness, M said. But the most prominent idea I can remember is that we use remorse as a source of force for our self invocations into the present. I have heard groups talk about the ideas as if they were something to achieve or accomplish. G said. And then, when people are given this idea of using remorse for their self invocation, remorse is transformed into the apparent absence of guilt. They paint guilt the color of remorse. Remorse to them is guilt in disguise. What is remorse? L asked. It has been said that remorse is a sensation to be used as a reminding factor to invoke presence. M said. Yes, remorse is a sensation, G said. Is this what was meant in that song that Parker wrote? What a sensation, T asked. But you have never told us about this idea when we were recording the song, when we recorded the song. T complained as G chuckled. What about the idea that we can use remorse in such a way as to reinforce the habit we have hopefully established of invoking presence during periods of stress so that at death, M asked, her voice trailing off at the end. Remorse is of no greater significance than a pair of old shoes, G said. If a pair of old shoes were useful for your work, I would send you out to buy some, and remorse is of no greater consequence. Remorse is a source of force, the basis of a technical method for candidates to ruthlessly use for their transformation, which can only result from the radiations produced during repeated invocations of presence and the effect of these self invocations upon the organic machine. The
So
most frequent
why don't we take a moment?
Mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, EJ's spending a lot of time here on this concept of remorse, right? There's a lot of paragraphs. He's written a lot of, he's talking about it here. Do we understand it? I mean, what is it under, how do you understand it yourself?
Just use it ruthlessly as a raw force to convert it into action. Basically, if you rather than dwelling in it and crying about it, just use that and apply it in what way wherein whatever you think is not right, you just put it right.
Okay. Anybody else want to take a shot?
Well, I think it's good that remorse is being told to use as a source of force because I think throughout on a day-to-day basis, we tend to do a lot of things that later on we regret. And I think remorse is a very common sensation
Okay.
felt by us.
Let me stop you there. What do you mean by you do something and then later you regret it? What does that mean?
Well, let's say if I said something to somebody and I then I regret it. Why did I say it? Why
What do you mean you
something
regret?
like that? So I
Why
feel
did
remorse.
you would feel remorse? What is why? I still don't get it. I mean, do you feel bad that you did it? What is the feeling of bad?
The feeling of bad. Uh,
You said I feel bad and I wish I hadn't done it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like doing it or not doing it, which would change, would have a much consequence. Uh, Not taking an action would have been a better choice in some situations like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
But isn't he trying to distinguish remorse from guilt?
That's
Uh, that's
where I was
that's the
heading to.
thing.
Mhm.
Go ahead,
Go
Bob.
ahead, Bob.
So what I realized is that remorse is something, for example, I said something and I realized that it was out of my negativity. I said something really rude to somebody and I made them feel really bad. And it's just happened yesterday. So it's pretty fresh. So what happened was, and then I realized that when I felt that feeling of letting out negativity, there was a sense of remorse that I could not contain myself, or I could not look into the negativity. And then I realized that I was living it for almost like 2 days, basically.
Hmm.
And I realized that the moment I apologized to the other person, now the remorse was gone. And
Mm,
then I suddenly realized that the action has to be so into it that when the remorse is there, it's kind of it creates a deep attention in you because
Hmm.
you don't want to repeat that. And but it's not that it's not a guilt. Like the differentiation, what I noticed between guilt and remorse was that guilt is something that, oh, I did this, I keep doing this over and over again, this, that. But the remorse was, oh my goodness, did I really do this, and hurt somebody? And that feeling, it was so intense that it just stays with you. And it like, I don't know how to put it, but it pulls you down. It kind of um, it brings you down to earth, basically, to
Okay.
show you your true self.
Yeah. Okay. Focus on that. Focus on that part. It brings you down to reality to focus on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you said whatever you said to this person, and you realize you were a real jerk, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you go, oh, what a jerk I am, and stuff like that. So is feeling that you're a jerk constitute the feeling of remorse?
No.
Correct.
So the jerk feeling does not matter. Like that is something that you are on and
Correct.
off.
Okay, go with that. Go with that. It's something that you are. And
So
what does that mean?
because what I realized is that emotions keep taking its flow, but the fact that it hurts somebody, what I noticed, guilt is more self-centered and remorse is I realized that that was something which was more outward. Like
yes.
Yeah. The Gurdjieffians call that external considering versus internal considering. You actually noticed that your being a jerk affected the other person. You actually can see it, which is pretty damn good.
Mm. It's interesting.
So
Yeah, for the
that's
first time
actually,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Bhavani. Finish your thought.
No, it just like suddenly opened up. It just expanded the external consideration. Like till now, you've heard the word, but just yesterday, now that you put it into, you put that word, now it makes more sense, the external consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sudden expansion like this. Yeah.
If I'm mostly interested in my image and I go, oh my gosh, I was a real jerk. And I was a real jerk. I wonder if they noticed. You know,
The guilt,
Yeah.
the guilt is mostly to the image factor that you want to look good, the self, yeah, true.
that's another ego. It's just more machine garbage. And it's a way that the machine has helped us by saying, I'm going to protect you here.
Mm.
And I'm going to protect you from seeing who you are. Part of the thing with remorse, and I mean, I've thought about this a lot, but part of the thing with remorse is you get to see something about the nature of the machine and the entity that you're carrying. Okay. We reincarnated into these particular envelopes. Okay. And then I grew up and I learned everything I could about how to survive in the world from my parents, my brothers, my cousins, my sisters. And then here I am. And so earlier tonight, somebody called and I was not what I would call generous of spirit with that person. Okay. Now, I could have let it go and people, oh yeah, that person. Yeah, I know that person. You're right. Or what does it say about me in that moment? So if I am taking the sacred duty of my caretaking this experience on this planet, caretaking it, then my remorse is that the way my machine is blocked me from a higher experience of that person, right? It was a very little thing, but it doesn't matter. It's how I remembered it. So my sadness has to do, my machine is keeping me from the beauty of my essential self. And now I see that that irritation triggered me out of that goal. Isn't that funny?
But also to realize that if you express that out, whatever the remorse you have, and you put it into words, I realized the ego took over right away. So that was so subtle that the moment you apologized to the person for that incident, you suddenly, the remorse was gone. So you suddenly, and you could, like that sensation where the ego takes over, that so subtly,
Very subtle.
Yeah.
I mean, the ego is brilliant, in my opinion, just bloody ingenious. It's creative. And it's just barely not infinite. Okay. You know, if you talk about big numbers, Nikhil, okay, in mathematics, it's just
Yeah,
a little bit less than infinite.
that's still quite a lot.
It's a big number.
I have a question. When Bhavani said her remorse was gone as soon as she apologized, I try to understand what she means because I know she's kind of surprised by that, and I was just wondering, is that the ego taking back because now she apologized, she did something good, and so her ego feels good about what happened, or is it
Mm,
she doesn't have the remorse because she freed herself from that pain and she saw that she did make suffering for others, and so by seeing that and apologizing and expressing sincerely from her heart, it is gone. So I just had those two ideas, and I was wondering.
That's beautiful.
So the last one seems the most beautiful. The first one seems like that's the machine thing. As soon as we resolve a problem, we already forgot what we did, and I just wonder.
And that's what I realized, that because the remorse was
did I lose
Yeah, we can't hear her.
Bhavani?
We don't hear
Yeah.
you, Bhavani.
Are you there, Bhavani?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the remorse felt like wasn't fire, but what do you say, the coal burning, you know? And the moment I said that, there was a sudden relief. But then the moment that ego took over and I observed it, I had to go back to the remorse factor because I noticed the ego taking over, and the way it just covers it up, so to sense that trying to cover up the remorse, and I don't know how to put it, but you could see that it's trying to put a shadow, or like put an umbrella over the rain kind of a thing, or how should I
Mm,
put it? But then I had to sweep it away back to feel that remorse, because you don't want to repeat that, and you have to let it burn inside you. And it's not like a fire, but it's coal burning,
Okay. What is the burn? What's the burn?
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Remorse creates this feeling of burning inside you.
Because the burning was when I noticed the emotion of the other person and that feeling of hurting someone. And like, again, like I've like, being a jerk is like a part of you, like I've noticed that you keep doing a lot of silly, idiotic things. But when it hurts somebody to the core and it shakes you too, that even if it's just a sentence, but if that one sentence could bring someone feel so low or someone so down, and you could suddenly like see that in the eyes, and you suddenly notice, wow, how could, like, how could this, this just come out like that without any thought? And then you become so remorseful of just your words.
But I think
First, I noticed you
remorse is a reminding factor too. It's a reminding factor.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bhavani.
So what I noticed was that that remorse was it was so intense from Saturday onwards, basically, that I was aware of every word I'm uttering, because I have to be careful. I have to be aware. I cannot do this again. And the thing was not me, but just to ensure that I do not cause this pain again to somebody else through words. And that is something that when I said sorry, the ego was trying to cover that up. And that's what I noticed. Just a word sorry was trying to just do that. So.
Yeah. it's not bad that you apologize. I think that there's a certain strength in being able to do that. But I'm wondering also, can remorse, the power of remorse, it says right here, remorse is a source of force, the basis of a technical method for candidates to ruthlessly use for their transformation. So when I notice that about myself, that I've got that kind of irritation, dismissal of another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel remorse? What do I feel bad about?
I think you feel bad because that other person now feels bad, and you think maybe it's because of you, or something you did. So
Well,
there
it
is
was
so
because of
so
me.
so when we were discussing between guilt and remorse, I think the main difference was guilt was self-centered, and remorse had a little bit of more empathy to it.
Hmm.
Remorse is more action oriented, and guilt is more, ruminating in losses and just inflicting pain on yourself.
Can you say that again? Louder.
I feel that remorse is more action oriented, while guilt is more passive and more, like just reveling in the darkness and feeling bad about it. While when you are in a state of remorse, you are more inclined towards solution.
So can you feel remorse in a situation where there is nobody else, it's just you? There, it has nothing to do with anybody else.
The remorse, what I felt was that, oh my goodness, could I really be so, like, is this really me? That question pops up.
Hmm.
So the guilt would be like, oh no, how does somebody else think of me, So
Really?
yeah. But remorse would be like, oh my goodness, is that really me? Like that's the thing which has shaken me. Is this really me? So, and that question pops up. You don't know the answer, but the question is so intense that you just want to know, is this really you? to
And
know.
so where does this source of force come from? It has,
Uh,
Situation.
go ahead, anybody.
I was
I
going,
was
the one
exactly going
that
to
is
say the same
asking the
thing.
question.
Go
So
ahead, Michelle.
I was just saying, the one that is asking the question, who is that one? In that similar idea of where it coming from, that
Mhm.
that question that you ask. Who is that one that is asking? It's not the same one that did the action. Yes, it's a different one.
Well, but maybe when you're a jerk like that, like I am, and like Bhavani is in those moments, that's who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you own, this is kind of crude, but own your shit, you know, because once you can see, and I guarantee you that once you notice that's in me too, I accept the fact that that's in my machine. I honor the fact that it's in there.
Yeah.
And
And
you
it's not, yeah, that is my machine, yeah. A reflex of my machine. It's not me, it's my reflex, yeah.
and I respect the fact that the machine's whatever it's doing,
Mhm.
My point is that is you.
Yes, yes, yes. You are responsible. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There
But
you go.
again,
Mhm.
but you're responsible. But again, the shock, remorse creates a certain shock. That's something
Yes,
we
it does.
realized.
Yes, it does.
And it creates such a heavy heart that you can barely breathe. Like it's just the heart center. And I mean, I don't know, it could be something else for others, but for me right now, it's like a heavy heartedness, you know, and
Mm.
and that shock is so deep that it's hard to express, you know. So it's basically that.
But what did we learn in HBM when if we see the mechanicality of the machine and you actually place your attention on your particular mechanicality, HBM says it starts to lose dominance over us. I mean, if you never see it, admit it, accept it, take responsibility, it controls. But if gradually you can notice it, then there's a beginning of a distance to it. And that's the concept of cleansing radiation. It's your own essential attention on it. You don't
Well,
run away from it.
So,
Mm,
David, when back when you said remorse is a source of force, and I think to
yeah,
that, I think Alka responded, uh, impartial observation. I think that your response, Alka? Because I was going to say
yeah,
something along the lines of that.
yeah. My point is that even the point that, there is an instant, even when you apologize, there's an ego. Because I was in the same situation, Bhavni, if you remember last to last week when we read this. And I was feeling what you were feeling at that point in time. And it has happened multiple times. It's not that it was the first time it happened, but I also noticed that yes, ego comes in, ego is there in all that we do. But there's by observing that ego, when you also keep observing that, the ego also kind of takes a different hue. It's more of an ego of a worker who's at it rather than a ego of a person uh, who's recovering a shock.
mm,
Hmm.
So the same observation is the key to from converting guilt to remorse, from converting the shock of remorse into the fuel for work. And yeah.
nice.
I was reading the next paragraph, and
Go
I
ahead,
have
keep reading.
I have the exact same complaint that the sentence says. It says the most frequent complaint about the presence exercise is that one cannot remember to do it. And that's me, many times. So like, oh,
Remorse,
uh,
put in more remorse there.
But this whole book that we've been reading here is ways and means to use all the tools you have, use your mechanicality to remember to invoke.
I wanted to read a passage, if it's okay, of Practical Work Conserve about that. Is that okay?
Go for it.
please.
Yeah, there is just a few lines, and it's chapter 14, Remorse of Conscience. We can use these first stirrings of conscience activated by the mood of remorse for past wrongdoings and injustices on our part to provide us with the motivation to conserve our precious time and energy for our work to awaken the machine. We can use this emotional state to help us remember to spend our inner force and subjective time, not just for self-satisfaction, but for work, which alone can give our life in the machine any real meaning.
I think the most important point here is the emotional state, which, Bhavni is so deeply, emotional about this right now. And that is the energy that is, it struck me as the most important point in what you just read, Michelle. Do you want to read it again? If you can, please.
Yeah.
We can use these first stirrings of conscience activated by the mood of remorse for past wrongdoings and injustices on our part to provide us with the motivation to conserve our precious time and energy for our work to awaken the machine. We can use this emotional state to help us remember to spend our inner force and subjective time, not just for self-satisfaction, but for work, which alone can give our life in the machine any real meaning.
Wow, that's powerful.
Chapter 14.
Yes, page 124.
Chapter 14 of which book?
Practical work
HBM.
on, practical
Oh,
work
sorry.
on strength.
Oh,
We'll do it next.
yes, yes, please.
We keep finding chapter in that book that relate
Yeah,
to what
you know,
we are
you know what,
reading.
you know what I think? All this time, you guys just keep referring to practical work on self and the exercise in it. I think we'll end up reading all of it before we even started.
No, but I'm
That's
so amazed that this thin book called Invocation of Presence, which we were thinking is going to be thin, it's taken us so much time and it has brought in so
yeah,
much of value.
yes.
It's not
Oh
even
yes.
funny.
Oh yes, I'm really surprised about that actually. The speed at which we began with HBM, and I guess the material that we were covering demanded that speed as well. But it seems apt that we are running at this pace with Invocation of Presence.
And it's funny because I just joined in when you finished reading this remorse is a source of force. And I couldn't even see it because there was some, rectangle showing there. And it was a question of remorse, and I was feeling it. It's like I don't even know what all you talked about ahead of this, I just joined in late.
Well, it's never a bad
It's
time
like
to
right there
join
for
the
me.
train.
Yeah.
Is that everybody has to go through the same in the group, everybody has to go through same experiences.
Exactly.
Yep. I mean, it's just a train. That's what I realized. And we're all passengers in that train. You're just like, somebody's up in the front berth and you're in the other car, that's it. So it doesn't matter. We're all going to that same destination.
This reminds me of a joke. Uh, I don't know. There is this guy who is in a high-rise building, just looking out into the window, and then he sees a guy falling in front of him, head first, down, and then he asks, "Hey, bro, how are you feeling?" the guy who's falling, he says, "So far, so good."
So far, so good.
I don't know why that joke just popped into my mind.
It's funny.
Okay.
Do we want to read further?
Yeah, can we read the next para?
Go for it. Whoever.
Self-invocation is a magical activity. Whether we like to
Let's
think,
go. I think we skipped this paragraph. Let's start with this. I think I just
okay.
read this first sentence and then we stopped there, I think.
Oh, I see. Okay. The most frequent complaint about the presence exercise is that one cannot remember to do it. And if you do happen to remember, other problems begin to present themselves. To begin with, we should remember to try to invoke presence, whether immediately successful or not, invoking presence into the body. Self-invocation is a magical activity, whether we like to think of it in this way or not, because we are using an invocation to draw the non-phenomenal parts of ourselves into the present, into our task of the sorcerer is to invoke the source. Ah, there is the invocation of presence is an invocation. And I pass.
But if we cannot remember to invoke, what difference does it make how much we know about self-invocation? It is
Did you guys
We
lose Michelle as
remember
well?
to. No. Your voice broke, Michelle.
Oh, okay. So maybe
Yeah.
someone go ahead, because my connection is not so good here.
We
I'll
can hear
continue.
you fine, but yeah. Okay.
Suppose every invocation of presence is successful, but we only remember to invoke ourselves only once or twice a year. This would not be very profitable for our work business. Such infrequent self-invocations are strictly for the hobbyist. Therefore, what would cause us to remember? Perhaps school conditions. Yet, school conditions are only a small percentage of your entire experience in this world. On the other hand, the most important time to invoke presence is under such conditions as extreme pain, stress, anxiety, upset, nostalgia, sentimentality, hysteria, certainty, security, ecstasy, dieting, and death. Wow, a whole range of condition. In other words, in other words, during a heavy psychological emotional experience is when we most need the invocation of presence. Wow.
Oh my God.
I like
That's
how
why they
You're,
say this
he,
shift you
he
from
equate,
one to
oh, looks like we lose someone.
he's equating dieting and death.
Never
Okay.
heard two words and after and
Oh, go ahead. Keep reading. On your deathbed.
on your deathbed as you lie there remembering the vision of all your deaths. They fall like an avalanche upon this new, most immediate death, but by self-invocation, this passing can be viewed in isolation from all other deaths, studied, used consciously as a portal which can carry you beyond the veil, perhaps even provide the force for ascension onto the cross. And I pass.
When the second Adam was ejected from the Garden of Eden, he was torn from the cross, forced by his suffering to descend, after which he was made to walk the earth with the lower animals. If he is ever to return to the garden and resume his rightful place as the first Adam, he must voluntarily regain the cross.
So does it mean to say
Orig-
that if he's ever to return to the garden, he's supposed to get back to the cross and then withstand the suffering voluntarily?
Right.
I see.
But keep reading.
Original sin is the first Adam's willful descent from the cross into the slow death of organic life, for which he lost his place in the garden, which is the same as the descent from the cross. In the same way, one birth can be isolated from the vision of all births. During these times, we are the most needful of the invocation of presence, and we wish to connect the invocation of presence to the most prevalent factor of this experience. Since emotions are not predictable, they do not always in everything occur exactly the same. And thoughts are too fluid, just a sequential cadence of associations. Obviously, we wish to use something certain, which occurs every time, to activate our remembering, to remind us to perform the invocation of presence.
Hmm.
So, what is it that occurs every time?
What is it that what?
He says we obviously wish to use something certain which occurs every time to activate our remembering. And I think we are chronically jerks. So our jerkness is the only thing that occurs all the time. That's why an emotion like remorse is a very strong tool.
Sure.
And thus,
We choose the sensation remorse because every organic activity is directed by the machine and not by our own presence, and therefore carries with it some remorse. We may not identify it as remorse, but the sensation will occur, for the sensation of remorse is associated with every negative event. Pass.
you mean associated with nothing? Case smirked. This nothing I will tell you about. G chuckled. Absolute nothing would attract immediate attention because it is absent in the midst of presence. However, one thing more sure than death and taxes is that the sensation of remorse will be activated often in the course of ordinary life and especially at the passing of the organic body. Whether the attention is rooted in the sensing centrum, the thinking centrum, or the power centrum. First, isolate the sensation of remorse in the course of your daily intensive study of the machine. Then identify it under any other name. A rose by any other name will smell as sweet.
That's the name of the chapter, by the way.
That phrase comes from the Shakespeare play of Romeo and Juliet.
Mm. I think
We're not going to be able to get to there's still fair amount to go, but I just want to make a quick comment about death. Okay,
Hmm.
I mean, don't we hear a lot of times that people, when they're dying, they think of all their regrets, right? Oh gosh, why did I do that? Oh gosh,
Hint of
why was I
truth.
mean to my sister?
Yeah, they say life flashes before your eyes or something like that.
Whatever that means, but certainly we see this concept of regret
Mm.
is constant on the deathbed. So if that's going to be a constant, what if we practice during our life and we get triggered by remorse to invoke our presence? And so here we are on our deathbed and we're dying, and we go, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't very nice to my Uncle Eddie and my cousin. I was," so that feeling of remorse starts to come up and da 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 da. Who cares in a sense? But if you can use that power to invoke presence in that moment, you might be a
Wow.
player. You might be a player.
and I
So
think
David,
sorry, go ahead.
you run a hospice, right? So you have seen you have operated many deaths. So is that like a common theme?
It's very
Uh,
common for the dying person to suffer regrets. And I think they've, detailed out that there's like 5 main regrets, stuff like that. And bottom line is that it is there on your deathbed as certain as other self-reflections are. So
Yeah, often it's regret to have not done something that we could have done or something like that
mm,
related. It could be others, but
I really regret that I didn't work harder. I could have made a lot more money than I did. Or I regret that I didn't actually buy that Maserati.
But again, regret, not remorse, right?
Regret and remorse are hand in hand. Yeah, they'll go hand in hand. The concept of this chapter so far is use the power of it as a reminding factor to invoke your presence.
But again, like regret, what I understand is something that you did or did not do, which you wanted to do. Remorse is more in terms of the action. So regret is still, I feel, in a subtle way, is still self-centered compared to remorse.
It could be. You're right. It could
hmm
be. It's a good subtlety to notice that discernment. But we'll come back to remorse. I myself have to spin off at this point, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next week if
Yeah, let's
if we're
yeah,
stop here at this
if we're
point.
still around. I mean, you
yeah.
never know.
We are on page 74. I'll try to remember that.
All right.
Uh,
Have a good week,
let me
everybody.
stop
Take
sharing my
care.
screen.
Thank you.